Most people don't fail because they can't earn. They fail because the first real milestone is brutally quiet. $25,000 doesn't change a life. It changes a trajectory. It teaches patience, removes panic, and builds proof. And once the math starts working, it doesn't stop. Harry didn't look like anyone building wealth. 32 years old. A regular job. A regular face in a regular crowd. He made $4,900 a month after tax working operations at a mid-sized logistics company. His rent was $1,650. Car payment $340. Insurance $160. Phone $70. Utilities averaged $140. Groceries were supposed to be $400, but routinely became $560. Then the leaks, $120 here for takeout, $85 there for just a few drinks, $49 for subscriptions he didn't remember signing up for. On paper, Harry should have had room. In reality, he ended most months with $120 left, sometimes negative. He had $3,200 in a checking account and $6,900 on a credit card at 19% interest. He had a 401k with $11,400, which sounded like something, until he realized it was basically a single emergency away from being irrelevant. The anxiety wasn't dramatic. It was constant. A low hum. The kind that makes people say I'm fine, and mean I'm coping. He wasn't trying to be rich. He was trying to stop feeling breakable. And that's why the first $25,000 mattered. Not because it was impressive. Because it was the first number that could absorb impact. And here's the twist. Month 1 started with something small enough to ignore. Harry was standing in line at a bookstore, killing time in the personal finance section like people do when they want to feel responsible without changing anything. He picked up Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. Not because he believed it would fix him. Because the cover didn't scream. It didn't promise a Lamborghini. It promised something quieter, behavior. Later that night, he read a line that stuck. The idea that wealth is what you don't see. The cars not bought. The upgrades delayed. The discipline hidden behind ordinary choices. Harry didn't feel inspired. He felt exposed. Because he realized his money wasn't failing due to complexity. It was failing due to friction. Tiny, repeated decisions that cost him his future in exchange for a present that didn't even feel good. So he did one tiny thing. He opened a separate savings account and named it Buffer. Not freedom. Not millionaire. Buffer. He set an automatic transfer for $25 every Monday morning. Just $25. Not enough to brag about. Not enough to even feel. But it was designed to do one thing, happen without a debate. That first week, nothing changed. He still bought coffee. Still scrolled. Still sighed when bills hit. But every Monday, $25 moved. A quiet motion. A small vote. And the point wasn't the amount. It was the pattern. Because once the pattern exists, the next move becomes possible. And then something shifts. Month 2 was where the romance died. The transfers kept happening, but Harry's life didn't get lighter. In fact, it felt heavier. Because now he was paying attention. And attention is expensive. It forces honesty. He looked at his spending like a documentary would. Not with shame. With a camera. The footage was brutal. He wasn't bad with money. He was exhausted and buying relief. He was using purchases as punctuation. A long day ended with takeout. A stressful email ended with a snack run. A boring night ended with online shopping. When he tried to cut back, he didn't feel empowered. He felt deprived. That's the early struggle nobody posts. The first stretch of building is not a glow-up. It's withdrawal. Harry wanted momentum, but money moves in slow motion at the beginning. He ran a simple monthly math check. Income, $4,900. Fixed bills, about $2,360. Minimum credit card payment, $210. Gas, $160. Groceries plus miscellaneous, easily $900. That left roughly $270, theoretically. But reality kept eating it. So he tried something boring. He limited himself to 2 frictionless purchases a week. 2 things he could buy without thinking. Everything else required a 24-hour wait. No app. No spreadsheet. Just a rule. The first week, he hated it. The second week, he noticed something: most wants dissolve overnight. And that's the part most people miss. The first $25,000 isn't about earning more. It's about stopping the leaks without becoming miserable. And Harry wasn't there yet. Not even close. But the camera was rolling. Month 3 delivered the test. Not a motivational test. A real one. Harry's car made a sound that translated into one sentence: pay attention now or pay more later. He took it in, expecting maybe $300. The mechanic handed him the estimate: $1,480. Tires. Brakes. A couple of things he delayed. This was the moment old Harry would have financed it and pretended it didn't count. Or swiped the credit card and promised himself he'd handle it next month. That's what broke people do, even when they earn decent money. Not because they're lazy. Because they're cornered. Harry sat in the waiting area and felt the familiar heat of panic. The humming anxiety tried to become a scream. Then he checked the buffer account. It was only $325. Not enough. Not even close. And yet, it mattered. Because for the first time, he had something that existed for pain. He paid $325 from buffer. Put the rest on the card. And instead of feeling defeated, he felt something stranger: clarity. The problem wasn't that emergencies happened. The problem was that he never had a system for them. That night he wrote one sentence on a sticky note and put it on his laptop: I don't need willpower. I need defenses. This was an identity shift.
Qui est but permanent.
He wasn't a guy trying to save. He was a guy building a financial body armor. And here's the twist: the setback didn't slow him down. It gave him a target. Because now $25,000 wasn't abstract. It was protection. Month 4 is where Harry stopped chasing motivation and started building structure. He called it the silent ladder. Not because it sounded cool. Because it reminded him what this was: climbing without applause. The silent ladder had 5 rungs, and he didn't reveal them to anyone. Not even friends. Especially not friends. The first rung was stop bleeding. The second was build buffer. The third was kill high-interest debt. The fourth was automate investing. The fifth was lifestyle lag. He was still stuck on the first 2 rungs, and that was the point. Most people skip to investing because it feels sophisticated. Harry realized sophistication is often avoidance. So he did the math without drama. If he could redirect $600 a month, he could build a $5,000 buffer in about 8 months. If he could then attack the credit card with $900 a month, he'd erase it in under a year. Then, that same $900 could go toward investing. Same money. Different direction. He restructured payday. The day his paycheck hit, 3 transfers happened automatically: $150 to buffer, $200 to a bills account, and $250 to the credit card. What remained in checking was his permission to live. If he overspent, he didn't blow the budget. He hit a wall. Boring. Powerful. He also cut one thing with surgical precision: the car payment. He sold the car, took a small loss, and bought a used Honda for $6,800 with a small credit union loan. Payment dropped from $340 to $180. Insurance from $160 to $110. The point isn't a Honda. It's the pattern. And then something shifts, because once the bleeding slows, time starts compounding. Month 6 felt like the first time Harry could breathe through his nose. Not because everything was fixed, but because the numbers finally started moving in his favor. The buffer account crossed $1,200. The credit card dropped below $5,000. His checking account stopped hitting that near-zero cliff before payday. He didn't celebrate. He didn't post. He didn't buy anything because I deserve it. He did something else. He made the system harder to sabotage. He removed saved cards from shopping apps. He deleted food delivery. He kept one streaming service, canceled the rest. He set his bank app to show only his bills account and buffer on the home screen. His spending account became something he had to click into. A small friction that changed behavior. Harry also started using what Ramit Sethi calls conscious spending, without turning it into a lifestyle brand. He picked 2 categories to spend freely on: fitness and 1 social night per week. Everything else became quieter. Not punishment. Focus. At work, he asked for overtime twice a month. Not every week. Just enough to add about $280 extra monthly after tax. That went straight to buffer.
No debate.
By month 6, he was saving and paying debt at a combined $850 a month. That number wasn't magic. It was simply what the system produced. And here's the twist. The more boring he became, the less life cost him. Friends didn't notice. His ego did. It wanted proof. It wanted applause. But Harry started understanding that stealth wealth is built in rooms where nobody claps. Year 1 arrived quietly.
No fireworks.
Just a different baseline. The buffer account hit $5,000. The credit card balance was down to $1,900. He hadn't made more money. He'd made money stop escaping. This was the moment many people get sloppy. They think the danger has passed. They relax the system. They buy the thing. They upgrade the apartment. They treat stability like a coupon. Harry didn't. He added a new rule from the silent ladder: lifestyle lag. If income rose, lifestyle stayed put for 1 full year. Not forever. Just long enough to capture the difference. Then a small promotion landed. Nothing cinematic. His take-home rose from $4,900 to $5,350 a month. An extra $450. Old Harry would have translated that into nicer everything. New Harry translated it into rung 3, kill the debt and start investing. He finished the credit card in 2 months. Then the $250 automatic payment didn't stop. It simply rerouted. Half into a low-cost index fund inside his retirement account, half into a taxable brokerage. He didn't change his wardrobe. He didn't change his phone. He didn't move. He let the gap widen between what he earned and what he needed. The point isn't deprivation. It's the pattern. And then something shifts, because once the debt is gone, the first $25,000 stops being savings. It becomes momentum. Year 2 is when Harry's story starts to look unfair from the outside. Not flashy. Just unfairly stable. His buffer stayed at $7,500 because he treated it like a wall, not a trophy. His investments climbed past $18,000 combined. The total of his liquid savings plus investments hovered near $26,000 for the first time. But the number itself wasn't the win. The win was what it did to his behavior. He started saying no faster. Not in conversations. In his head. The mental negotiation disappeared. He didn't need to decide to save. Saving was the default. Spending was the decision. He also began using a simple filter before any purchase. Does this increase my freedom or my overhead? Most purchases increased overhead. Even small ones, because they trained his brain to seek relief externally. Here's what the math looked like in a typical month in year 2. Take home, $5,350. Fixed bills, $2,280. Food and gas, $850. Fun and fitness, $350. That left about $1,870. Of that, $1,200 went automatically to investing, $300 to buffer maintenance and sinking funds, leaving around $370 as slack.
No heroic restraint.
Just lanes. And here's the twist. The first $25,000 didn't arrive as a pile of cash. It arrived as a system that produced $25,000 without drama. That's why it's the hardest. Because the first time, there's no proof it works. And then something shifts, because proof changes identity faster than motivation ever could. Year 3 delivered the conflict scene Harry didn't expect, social pressure disguised as concern. It happened at a friend's birthday dinner, a place with mood lighting and prices that dared you to flinch. The group started talking about upgrades. Bigger apartments. New cars. Finally treating ourselves. Someone asked Harry why he still drove the same used Honda. Another joked about his monk era. It wasn't cruel. It was casual. And that's what made it dangerous. Harry felt the old itch. The need to signal. To prove he wasn't behind. He could feel the purchase forming in his mind like a reflex. Maybe a nicer car, just to stop this feeling. Then he went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. Not dramatically. Just a pause. He remembered the mechanic estimate. The panic. The sticky note, "I need defenses." He walked back and smiled, and he lied a little, the way stealth wealth requires. "Honestly, I just don't care about cars." That sentence wasn't fully true. He did care. He cared about what cars represented. But he cared more about not being owned by that representation. The point isn't pretending you're above it. It's the pattern. He paid his share, went home, and didn't browse car listings. That night, he transferred an extra $200 into investments. Not to punish himself. To reinforce identity. And then something shifts, because the real battle isn't numbers. It's belonging. Year 4 is where the framework reveals its hidden stage. Harry added a 6th rung to the silent ladder, handoff. The first 5 rungs were about control. Stop bleeding. Build buffer. Kill high-interest debt. Automate investing. Lifestyle lock. But handoff was different. It was about letting your system take over so your emotions couldn't. He did it by making decisions once, then locking them behind automation. Raises automatically increased investment contributions. Tax refunds went straight into the brokerage. Bonuses were split, 70% investing, 30% guilt-free spending. The ratios were pre-decided. No negotiating in the moment. By late year 4, his accounts told a quiet story. Buffer, $10,000. Investments, $42,000. Total, $52,000. Not millionaire numbers. But unbreakable compared to where he started. And here's the math that makes the first $25,000 the hardest. The same monthly contribution that crawled at the beginning now felt like it was accelerating. Because he wasn't fighting debt, he wasn't leaking, and the market, over time, had started doing what markets tend to do, move upward with volatility along the way.
No guarantees.
Just a long-term tendency. At this point, the $25,000 mark was behind him, but it still mattered because it marked the moment he stopped being fragile. Everything after was built on that foundation. And here's the twist. The climax wasn't a windfall. It was a decision to hand off control to the system permanently. Year 5 brought the flip. Not because Harry got rich overnight, but because his relationship with time changed. He was offered a new role at another company with higher pay, take home around $6,400 a month. The old fantasy would be to upgrade everything immediately. New apartment. New wardrobe. New car. The visible life. Harry didn't do that. He did something that looks almost boring enough to be stupid. He kept his life the same for 12 more months. Same rent. Same Honda. Same grocery routine. Same 2 frictionless purchases rule. That created a gap of roughly $1,050 extra per month compared to his old take-home, after small adjustments. That gap became pure fuel. He increased investing to $2,100 a month automatically. This is the handoff moment. The flip. When income growth stops being a lifestyle event and becomes an engine upgrade. The point isn't earning more. It's the pattern. By the end of year 5, Harry's buffer stayed at $12,000. His investments crossed $95,000. Not because he discovered a secret stock. Because he discovered a secret behavior, letting time do the heavy lifting while he stayed invisible. People around him still assumed he was doing fine. They had no idea his money could now absorb surprises, job changes, or even a bad year without collapsing. And here's the twist. Stealth wealth isn't hiding money from others. It's hiding your fragile self from your impulses. After the flip, Harry became almost aggressively normal. He didn't chase status. He didn't argue about money. He avoided flashy purchases not out of virtue, but because he understood the real threat. Lifestyle inflation is a slow leak that feels like progress. He practiced lifestyle lag like a discipline. Every time he wanted to upgrade, he waited 3 pay cycles. Not to torture himself. To see if the desire was real or emotional. Most of the time, it was emotional. He also protected his habits like they were confidential. He didn't explain his system to co-workers. He didn't try to convert friends. He learned the most stealth wealth lesson of all: the world will tempt you to perform. You don't owe it a performance. When people asked how he was so calm, he talked about sleep, not savings. When someone teased his old car again, he laughed and changed the subject. He didn't need to win the conversation. He needed to win the decade. And in private, he kept the silent ladder visible, updated in a notebook. Not as motivation. As governance. The rules ran his life when moods couldn't. The point isn't being cheap. It's the pattern. Because once you hit that first durable milestone, the goal changes. It's no longer get to $25,000. It's stay the kind of person who got there. And then something shifts, because the real wealth isn't the number. It's the person who can repeat the process without needing luck. If Harry's story sounds quiet, that's because it is. That's the lesson. The first $25,000 is the hardest because it requires building a machine while living inside the old chaos. It demands patience without proof. It asks for boredom without applause. The takeaway isn't that everyone should copy Harry's exact numbers. They won't match. Rent differs. Income differs. Life differs. The point isn't the Honda. It's the pattern. Here's what can be done tonight. First, create a buffer account and automate a small transfer weekly, even if it's $25. Second, remove one leak by adding friction, delete delivery apps, remove saved cards, or enforce a 24-hour wait on non-essentials. Third, choose 2 spending categories that stay, and let everything else get quieter. Fourth, write a simple ladder: stop bleeding, build buffer, kill high-interest debt, automate investing, lifestyle lag, handoff, and commit to wrong order. Fifth, decide your raise rule now: future raises increase investing first, lifestyle later. This is educational content, not financial advice. Everyone's situation is different, and real decisions should be made with full context and professional guidance if needed. If the quiet approach feels slow, that's the sign it's working. The first milestone is supposed to feel unimpressive. That's why so few reach it.